There is a kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with living alone, nor does it come from a lack of friends. It is far more subtle than that. You can sit in the middle of a crowd, still laughing, still adding your voice to the conversation, and yet inside you feel as if you are standing behind a thick pane of glass, seeing everything clearly while no one truly sees you back. Deep thinkers encounter this state again and again. You notice a small gesture in someone's behavior. You raise a question that most people skip over. You connect silent fragments within yourself, and suddenly, you realize you are moving too far away from the rhythm everyone else is following. When you try to share, the usual response is a polite smile, a half-hearted, "yeah, maybe," and then the subject quickly shifts away. Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to share the things that seem important to you." This is exactly what deep thinkers face. They do not lack people, they lack resonance. This video does not promise to erase that loneliness, because it is part of the soul's initiation, a sign that you are entering a psychological territory few ever dare to reach. But what I promise is this: you will begin to see it in a different light, not just as emptiness, but as a marker that you are stepping into a stage of inner life that belongs only to the rare and the courageous. The deeper you think, the more you notice distances that cannot be hidden. One of the clearest symptoms is when you share an idea or an observation that has kept you awake for nights, only to watch the listener nod vaguely, then quickly shift the conversation back to dinner plans or the weekend ahead. What feels vital to you gets swallowed in silence, leaving behind a mixture of emptiness and isolation. Another familiar scene. During gatherings, you smile and listen, but inside you are asking questions that run deeper. What truly makes them happy? Are they deceiving themselves? And in the very moment you consider speaking, you know your words will weigh down the atmosphere. So you hold back and carry the loneliness with you as you leave. The pain of deep thinkers does not come from the absence of people, but from the absence of connection at depth. Your body is present, but your soul drifts on another orbit. This carries psychological consequences. You start doubting yourself, wondering if you are too different, too strange. You may spend sleepless nights replaying unfinished conversations in your mind, as if searching for the exact point where you went wrong, and then a spiral begins. The less resonance you find, the more you withdraw, and the more you withdraw, the lonelier you feel. Jung emphasized that human beings cannot live without community, but they also cannot betray their own soul just to belong. This is the paradox that deep thinkers endure. If they fully conform, they suffocate, but if they remain authentic, they feel exiled. The real issue is not how many people are around you, but how many can meet you with genuine presence. And when that number is painfully small, loneliness becomes the atmosphere you breathe every day. There is a truth most deep thinkers experience but rarely name. Your loneliness is not random. It is the inevitable outcome of a psychological process. Carl Jung called it individuation, the path of separating from the collective in order to become a whole individual. It may sound lofty, but you have already felt it. Think back to the last time you sat in a meeting or at a party. Everyone was laughing, talking about work, money, the safe things. You laughed along too, but inside your mind a different question was echoing. Does any of this actually matter? In that moment, you sensed an invisible curtain between you and the rest of the room. You didn't despise them, but you also no longer belonged to that rhythm. Jung believed that every time your mind asks questions beyond convenience and conformity, you are stepping further into the journey of individuation. And that journey is never crowded. It always demands separation, sometimes even isolation. Ordinary people find safety in the crowd, while deep thinkers feel they lose themselves if they stop there. This is the crucial link. You are not lonely because you failed to belong. You are lonely because you have entered a psychological stage most people are not yet ready to reach. Think back to the moments when you held back, silenced your true thoughts because you feared strange looks. That suppression created the ongoing sense of alienation. You are not alone in this experience. Many deep thinkers share the same tragedy. To see more, to feel more, but to find few who can truly walk beside them. And it is exactly here that Jung flips the perspective. Loneliness is not a black hole swallowing you. It is a signal that you are standing at the threshold of inner maturity. Like climbing a mountain, the higher you ascend, the fewer companions remain. Not because the path is wrong, but because not everyone has the strength to climb further. Your loneliness is proof that you are already at a higher altitude, and from there, you will see landscapes the crowd below cannot even imagine. If you pay attention, the loneliness of deep thinkers does not appear once and then vanish. It becomes a subtle loop repeating itself through life. The mechanism begins with something small. You say a sentence that goes beyond the flow of conversation, and it falls into silence. The sting of rejection makes you retreat. Next time you remind yourself, don't say it, they won't understand anyway. And true enough, you stay silent. You blend in by telling shallow stories, only to return to yourself afterward feeling empty. Gradually, your brain develops a reflex. Whenever you want to reveal something true inside, you hear an invisible voice whisper, "Hold it back. No one will listen." That is the unconscious programming that is putting you into a cycle of avoidance. Carl Jung once warned that what we repress does not disappear. It returns in another form. For deep thinkers, what gets repressed is the longing for deep connection, the hunger for a genuine dialogue. You do not give it an outlet, so it comes back as restlessness, insomnia, or even depression. You are exhausted, not because there are too few people around you, but because you unconsciously signed an agreement. I will pretend to be fine to keep the peace. And every time that agreement is repeated, you drift further away from your inner voice. What makes this more dangerous is that the loop not only keeps you silent, but also leads you to choose the wrong people. When your inner world is starving for listening, you cling to anyone who seems to pay attention. But often that attention is shallow, just enough to trick you into thinking you are understood, only for disappointment to return when you realize they were never truly there. This is how the unconscious works. It pushes you to seek substitutes, but without awareness, you keep falling into half-hearted conversations that only deepen your loneliness. And here lies the potential breaking point. Jung said, "You do not get rid of darkness by avoiding it, only by making it conscious." Loneliness works the same way. It does not end by finding more friends or filling your schedule. It only transforms when you dare to look directly at the loop, to see clearly that the silence you meet is not proof you are invisible, but a sign that you are living on another layer of perception. That does not make you strange. It makes you honest with yourself. Think back to the last time you stayed silent in a conversation. You sat there, the words stuck in your throat, and you left carrying emptiness. In that moment, instead of blaming yourself for being too different, you could recognize it for what it is, the signal of a soul entering a territory few ever dare to touch. And if you stay until the end of this video, you will discover something the majority never realize about this loneliness, that it is not a sentence, but an invitation. Picture a moment you have likely lived before. You sit in a conversation and inside you rises the urge to share something true. You gather all your courage to speak. Your words fall like a small stone into the surface of a lake, waiting for the ripples to expand. But instead of resonance, the surface gives back only a shallow nod. A few seconds of awkward silence, and then the topic shifts to a new movie or a weekend party. Your words are left hanging, dropped into the air like a letter sent with no reply. This is the essence of the loneliness of the deep thinker. In those unfinished conversations, you do not just lose a chance for connection. You feel that a part of yourself has been left on the table with no one picking it up. Each time it happens, you learn to stay silent. You learn to only say safe things. And in that very act, you begin to drift away from your real self. Deep thinkers often live in this fragile state, smiling on the outside, blending in, while inside carrying hundreds of unanswered questions. The metaphor of the unfinished conversation reveals something else. You are not lonely because of a lack of people. You are lonely because of a lack of true dialogue. It is not an empty room that makes you feel lost. It is a crowded room where no one touches what matters most in you. And the silence that stretches after an abandoned sentence can hurt more than if no one had been there at all. But Jung would tell you that this moment is not only a wound, it is also a signpost. An unfinished conversation is proof that you have already gone further than the common script, that your mind is knocking on the door of depth. A door most are not ready to enter. The problem is not that you are out of rhythm. It is that you are trying to reach a level where few dare to go. The next time you experience that silence, try shifting the way you see it. Instead of calling it a failure, see it as a mirror reflecting that you belong to a different layer of dialogue. The sentence that fell unheard is not lost. It becomes a seed within you, reminding you that not every word needs a response to hold value. And from those seeds, your solitary path will find its new strength. If you are brutally honest with yourself, you will probably remember many similar moments. You sit at a dinner table, everyone laughing loudly. You smile along, but inside you only want to leave. Or you send a long message, pouring into it everything you think and feel, and what comes back is just a single line. Yeah, true. Those moments are like tiny needles, invisible to others, but sharp enough for you to know you just lost a little more faith that anyone could truly understand you. The truth is, you have grown used to self-censorship. You hear people talking about work, about ordinary life, and a different question arises in your mind, but you swallow it down. You fear the strange look, the sudden silence, the judgment that you are too serious. So you choose silence. You choose to blend in, but inside a whisper echoes, "Is anyone really hearing me?" The cost of this is not small. Every time you abandon your inner voice, you are training your soul to live a double life. One face to be accepted, the other burying what matters most. Slowly, you begin to feel tired in crowds because you know that sooner or later you will come home carrying emptiness. And inside that emptiness, you feel twice as lonely, not only lacking resonance outside, but also losing the truth within yourself. If you never stop, this loop tightens. You will find yourself avoiding conversations, or only playing the role of the perfect listener who is never allowed to be real. You will gradually believe that loneliness itself is proof something is wrong with you. But Jung would remind you of something different. This loneliness is not a punishment, it is a test. It asks you, will you dare to keep your true voice even when no one answers? And your answer to that question will shape how you live the rest of your life. You have grown used to calling it loneliness. But stop for a moment and look closer. Is it really just the absence of companions? Or is it another form of presence? A depth of presence that others are not yet capable of reaching? Jung often emphasized that when a person enters the journey of individuation, they inevitably find themselves drifting away from the common rhythm. This is not pathology, not social failure, but proof that you are drawing nearer to your innermost self. So instead of calling it loneliness, try naming it deep presence. When you are sitting in a conversation and your thought is left unfinished, the moment may sting, but at the same time, it signals that you have just touched a layer of reality the crowd is not yet ready for. It is not emptiness, it is another depth. Others may see you as silent, but in truth, you are engaged in a different dialogue with your own soul. And it is this inner dialogue that opens the door to real awareness. Begin changing the language you use with yourself. Instead of saying, "I was left behind," say, "I am sitting at a level few choose to reach." Instead of asking, "Why does no one understand me?" say, "I am stepping into a space where understanding requires time to arrive." This new language will not erase the sense of estrangement, but it will give you another frame. You are not being drained. You are going deeper. Yet Jung also whispered a warning. If you only go deeper and never dare to return to the world, you risk becoming trapped in the dark. Deep presence is not a wall, it is a bridge. It gives you the ground to engage with others more truly, with fewer illusion. When you learn to value inner dialogue, you also learn not to overburden external ones with expectation. This frees you from the cycle of constant disappointment and makes every rare moment of real connection infinitely more precious. You may wonder, if everyone chose depth, would I still be lonely? The answer is probably no, because this path was never meant for everyone. But you do not need the crowd. You need only a few true connections, and they often appear only when you are no longer panicked by silence. It is like standing before a lake. The more you wait for ripples, the more you despair. Only when you accept the stillness do you realize it is already reflecting the entire sky. So next time you walk away from a gathering with a sense of being out of place, hold on to another language. This is not absence. This is a space where I am fully present. And from this deep presence, you will find a strength unknown to those still rushing inside the crowd. Theory can open doors, but without practice, the loneliness will only repeat itself. So, what can you actually do on ordinary days? First, begin by recording the unfinished conversations. Every time you try to say something deeper and it gets cut off or falls into silence, write it down. No need for elegance, only honesty. By doing this, you give yourself what others cannot yet give you, a space that listens. Second, create deliberate silences. Instead of filling the emptiness with music or social media, try spending 15 minutes in stillness, simply observing the flow of thought. Jung believed the unconscious speaks through such moments. Sometimes loneliness only needs permission to reveal itself, instead of being constantly covered up. Third, choose one person to attempt a genuine dialogue with. You don't need them to understand everything, you just need to dare to speak a part you have never spoken before. If they don't respond, you still have your own record. If they do listen, you have just found a small crack of light in this world. And finally, remember that feeling different does not mean being wrong. Every time you sustain deep presence, you are training yourself in a rare skill. The ability to be with yourself without collapsing. That is not a flaw. It is the foundation of inner freedom. If you keep treating loneliness as a wound that must be hidden, the consequences will be quiet but deep. You will gradually learn to survive inside half-hearted conversations, to blur your inner voice, and eventually to believe that the silence of others is proof that you are not worthy of being heard. The price is a disconnection from your true self. You will find yourself more and more exhausted from wearing the mask of sociability while your inner life slowly runs out of faith. One day, you look back and realize it has been a long time since you last spoke about what truly mattered to you. But if you dare to see this loneliness with different eyes, everything shifts. Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." This means loneliness is not a sign of lack. It is a signal that you carry something of value within. And that value is only preserved when you keep it alive, even if no one immediately responds. Ordinary people seek comfort in noise, but deep thinkers learn to find strength in stillness. When you accept that not everyone can follow you into depth, you stop blaming yourself. Instead, you become selective, patient, and one day you will discover that the rare connections shine 100 times brighter than dozens of surface relationships. The cost of not changing is the loss of your inner voice, but the reward of facing it is a new freedom. You are no longer afraid of silence, no longer panicked when left unfinished. You begin to see clearly that loneliness is not darkness, it is a door. And when you step through that door, you find wholeness, a place where you no longer need anyone else to validate your worth. Imagine this. You speak something that truly matters to you and the room falls into silence. Before, that silence felt like a wound, making you want to pull back every word. But from now on, see it as the space you have created, a space wide enough for your truth to echo. No one replying immediately does not mean it vanishes. Sometimes truth takes time to reach the ready ears, and even if no one listens, you still have yourself. What is frightening is not the silence, but silencing your own voice within. When you keep it alive, even if only for you, you break free from dependence on the crowd's reactions. That is the freedom Jung called the beginning of individuation, a true life, no longer waiting for external validation. If you are still here by now, you probably know your loneliness is not a flaw, but a reminder. A reminder that you are stepping into deeper ground, a place few ever dare to go. And sometimes the greatest reward is not finding someone who understands you, but finding the courage not to betray yourself. In the next video, I will take you further into another layer of this journey. I will not reveal what it is yet, only hint that it has to do with what you always avoid looking at whenever you are alone. When you are ready, that door will open,